I was marked absent in a class I never signed up for. I still remember the shock of it, standing in the vice principal's office, the hum of the fluorescent lights drilling into my skull, while she flipped through attendance sheets with red pen circles and scrawled notes like "no response" and "missing since Monday." My name, full name, was listed among the students of room 304. But there was no room 304. Our school only had 3 floors. The 3rd floor was administrative offices, locked storage, and an old janitor's closet that always smelled like stale bleach. I'd never even been up there until that day. That was the beginning, before the dreams, before the keys, before I started waking up with grime on my fingers and the sound of bells in my ears. It all started with a simple question. Why were you skipping? When I denied it, the secretary gave me that long, practiced look that adults reserve for teenagers they think are lying. She didn't argue, just said she'd have to call my parents. I left the office with my stomach in knots. Back in homeroom, I tried to laugh it off. Ben and Kayla said it was probably a glitch in the system, maybe someone with a similar name, or a clerical error. No big deal. But then came the notes. Folded sheets of lined paper began showing up in my locker, tucked between books, even inside my pencil case. Same handwriting. Neat, round, too perfect, like from a textbook. The first one read, "You were late again. We missed you." 304, I thought it was a prank. Told Ben, who swore he had nothing to do with it. Kayla suggested it might be the theater kids. They were always doing creepy scavenger hunt things for marketing. But this didn't feel like theater. By Friday, I had 5 notes, all of them talking like I belonged somewhere I didn't, like I'd forgotten something. And I started hearing the bell. Not the usual school bell. Ours buzzed like a dying mosquito. This was different. It rang sharp, clean, and slow, once every 5 seconds. I heard it when I was walking down the north stairwell, alone. I heard it in the gym locker room, even when no one else flinched. I heard it again on Saturday, outside of school. A single chime, right outside my bedroom window, at 3:07 a.m. At some point, I started asking questions. Mr. Glasner, the janitor, said he didn't remember any room 304. He'd been here since 1994. Longer than most of the paint, he joked. But when I asked to go to the 3rd floor, he got quiet. Said the stairwell was sealed off now, for renovations. That was a lie. Because later that night, I found the door unlocked. I shouldn't have gone up. But I did. There was no light on the 3rd floor. Just this thick, dense air, like an attic in summer. My flashlight beam cut through the dust, revealing signs of old use, footprints, a forgotten backpack, peeling posters with outdated fonts about internet safety and pledge to read. And a door. Room 304. It shouldn't have been there, but it was. The number was clean, newer than the rest. A single strip of white masking tape with bold black marker. 304. The door was slightly ajar. I didn't go in. I closed it. Backed away, ran down the stairs like something was chasing me. And maybe it was. The moment I stepped outside, my ears popped. My watch stopped. And my phone had a voicemail. I never heard it ring. No call log, just a single message. A breath. Then a whisper. "Where were you?" I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the cracked open door, the strip of tape with 304, the dust in the hallway that somehow didn't look old enough. The voicemail stayed in my phone, but I couldn't replay it. It vanished the moment I tapped it again, like it had only existed to be heard once. Monday morning, I didn't go to homeroom. I walked the halls instead, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. Part of me thought maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe the stress of everything had finally snapped something loose in my head. But then I passed the stairwell again. It was locked, chained shut with a fresh padlock, A sign was taped to it. Closed for maintenance. Do not enter. But I'd been there. I'd seen it. Touched the doorknob. And then it got worse. During lunch, I opened my backpack to get my wallet and found another note, folded in the exact same way as the others, tucked neatly between my notebooks. Only this time, it was written in a shaky hand, the ink slightly smeared. It's your turn to bring chalk. We can't start without you. That night, I asked my parents if anyone had called the house last week about school, attendance, anything. They looked at each other. My mom said, "No." My dad hesitated. Then he said someone had called. A woman. She'd asked if I was still sick. That didn't make any sense. I hadn't been sick. I hadn't missed a single day. And then Kayla stopped talking to me. I cornered her after class, asked her what was wrong. She said she didn't want to be involved, that she'd heard what I'd been doing. I asked what she meant, but she just shook her head and walked away. Ben still sat with me at lunch, but he was nervous, fidgety, constantly glancing over his shoulder. When I pushed him, he told me that something was going around. Stories about me. That I'd been disappearing between classes. That people had seen me walking down the hallway alone, going up the stairs no one was supposed to use. But I hadn't. At least, I didn't remember it. That night, I laid out everything on my bedroom floor. The notes, the map I'd drawn of the third floor from memory. I tried to make connections, but the pieces refused to fit. None of this made sense. Then I noticed the newest note, the one about the chalk, had a date written on the back. It was tomorrow. I couldn't stop shaking. I told myself I wouldn't go. That whatever this was, I didn't owe it anything. But the next morning, there was chalk in my backpack, wrapped in a brown paper napkin, dusty and smooth. I didn't put it there. I skipped my afternoon classes, waited in the library until the last bell rang. Then I waited longer, until the halls emptied and the cleaning staff began to roam. At 4:07 p.m., I walked back to the stairwell. The chains were gone. The padlock was gone. No sign had been taped to the door. I opened it, and the air hit me, heavy, warm, like the inside of a mouth. The smell of old wood and something faintly metallic. I climbed the stairs slowly, every step creaking underfoot. Room 304's door was wide open, and this time I went inside. The room was lit, but there were no lights. Just a steady gray illumination that seemed to come from nowhere in particular, like daylight filtered through water. Desks were arranged in perfect rows, wooden with smooth tops and metal legs. Each had a name carved into it, not written, but carved, like someone had taken a knife and etched them in. Some names were old, the wood worn around them. Others looked fresh. The last one in the back row was mine. I stood at the doorway too long. Long enough that the air in the room began to feel wrong, pressurized, like it was waiting. So I stepped in. It was colder inside than it should have been, but my skin prickled with sweat. I touched the desk with my name on it. The wood was warm, smooth, too smooth. Then I heard the voice, a woman's voice. Calm, clipped, familiar. "Take your seat, please." I turned, fast, but there was no one at the front of the room, only a tall desk and an old chalkboard behind it, dusty and untouched. And yet, the voice came again, clearer. "Take your seat." I sat. Immediately, I felt something press against my back. Not a hand, not a shove, just a presence. Like if I stood up, something would shove me back down. The chalk in my pocket grew heavy. The board lit up. Not with light, but with lines. Thin chalk lines writing themselves across the black surface. Long, looping, nonsensical. Symbols I didn't recognize. No letters, no numbers. Just marks. Like something trying to communicate but not knowing how. I whispered, What is this? No answer. And then, from the hallway, the sound of a bell. But it wasn't the school bell. It was deeper, slower. Not a ding, but a clang, like something being struck, like metal on stone. The sound made my teeth hurt. The door behind me slammed shut, and I ran. I didn't think. I just moved. My feet hit the floor in a blur, and I flew down the stairs, skipping 3 steps at a time. I hit the bottom and nearly fell, breath ragged, chest burning. When I looked back, the door was gone. Not closed. Gone. As if the stairwell had never existed. I backed away slowly, bumping into a janitor pushing a cart. He looked at me, confused. "You okay?" I wanted to ask him about the 3rd floor, about room 304, about the note, about the chalk. But instead, I just nodded. "Yeah. Sorry, wrong stairs." He frowned. "That staircase has been closed for years. Collapse hazard. They sealed it." I left the school without getting my backpack. That night, I opened my phone. I had a new voicemail. No number, no contact. Just one sentence, whispered in that same calm, clipped voice. "You were absent today." It had been 2 weeks since Alex received the letter. He hadn't expected anything unusual, just a regular piece of correspondence from his old friend, Mark. But when he opened it, his breath caught in his throat. The words, written in slanted, almost shaky handwriting, were simple. "I'm here. I didn't mean to leave. I can explain everything soon." Alex hadn't spoken to Mark in over 3 years, ever since that fateful night. The accident, the darkness of the crash, and the cold, distant hospital room. Mark was gone, or at least that's what Alex had been told. The doctors had made it clear that the injuries were fatal. But now, this letter, this eerie message, had him questioning everything. Had Mark somehow survived? Was this some kind of cruel joke? Or was there something more to it? Alex sat at the small wooden desk in his apartment, staring at the letter in disbelief. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from an overwhelming sense of confusion. He couldn't let it go. He had to know more. He had to understand how Mark could have sent this letter when it was clear that he had been buried weeks ago. That night, Alex decided to visit the old neighborhood, the same one where he and Mark had spent their childhood, wandering the streets, hanging out at the park, and talking about the future. He hadn't been back there in years, and yet something about the letter was pulling him there, like an invisible thread tugging at his chest. The street was quiet as he parked his car near the corner. The dim streetlights flickered, casting long shadows on the cracked sidewalk. It was the same as he remembered. No one was around, and the air felt thick with an unsettling silence. He hesitated for a moment before stepping out, the cold air biting at his skin. He wasn't sure what he expected to find here. A sign, a clue, something to explain the letter. But the more he walked, the more disoriented he became. Alex walked past the old bakery, the place where he and Mark had spent countless hours after school, talking about life, their dreams, and the things they hoped for. The windows were dark, and the shop had been closed for years. He couldn't help but feel a chill creeping up his spine. The park, too, looked different. It wasn't just the overgrown grass or the rusting swings. There was something about it that felt off, as if time itself had stopped here. He sat on the old bench that had been their favorite, the wood creaking under his weight. As he sat there, staring at the empty space in front of him, he felt a shiver run down his back. And then he heard it, the faintest sound, like footsteps approaching from behind. It was so soft, so subtle, that he thought he might be imagining it. But as the seconds passed, it grew louder, closer. His heart began to race. He stood up quickly, looking around, but there was no one there. The park was still and empty. No sign of life, no movement, Nothing but the wind rustling through the trees. But then, he noticed something else. On the ground, just a few feet from where he had been sitting, was a small object. He bent down to pick it up. It was a photograph, old and worn. The edges were curled, and the colors had faded with time. But as he stared at it, his blood ran cold. It was a picture of him and Mark, taken during their last year together before the accident. There was something off about it, though. In the background, just barely visible, was a figure, a shadowy silhouette standing at the edge of the frame. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. He felt a strange sensation crawling over him, as if someone, or something, was watching him. But there was no one in sight. The letter, the photograph, the footsteps, all of it felt connected. But to what? The pieces were there, scattered, but they made no sense. He needed answers. But where would he find them? And then, he remembered something. The house. Mark's house. The one he had grown up in. The one that had been empty since the accident. Was just a few blocks away. He didn't know why, but a sense of urgency gripped him. He had to go there. He had to find the truth. As he approached the house, the familiar sight of the old brick exterior and the overgrown yard made his heart race. The place looked abandoned, forgotten by time. But something was wrong. The door, which had always been locked tight, was slightly ajar. Alex pushed it open cautiously, his breath shallow as he stepped inside. The air was stale, the silence almost suffocating. It was as if the house had been waiting for him, frozen in time, just like everything else. The walls were covered in dust, the furniture abandoned, the windows covered in grime. But then, he saw it. A small object sitting on the coffee table. It was a box, wooden and worn, with a simple inscription on the top. For when you return. Alex's pulse quickened. He walked toward it, his hand shaking as he lifted the lid. Inside was a small stack of letters addressed to him. They were all from Mark. Some were recent, some old. But the last one, the one at the top, caught his attention. The handwriting was still familiar, yet somehow different. I didn't leave, Alex. I'm still here. You just have to believe me. A chill ran down his spine. My fingers tightened around the letter. The room felt heavier, like the air itself was clinging to my skin. I read the words again, then again, almost hoping they would rearrange themselves into something more rational. But they didn't. The sentence stared back at me, simple and silent like a whisper from the other side. I didn't leave, Alex. I'm still here. You just have to believe me. I sat back on the couch, the musty smell of the house filling my nose. The silence buzzed. The floor creaked under my feet, as if the house was breathing. I didn't know what I was supposed to do with this. I didn't know if I should cry or scream or run. I just sat there, holding the letter like it might disappear if I let go. Then I saw something strange. On the far wall, beside the covered fireplace, was a mirror I hadn't noticed before. It wasn't the mirror itself that was strange. It was what was written across the glass. At first, I thought it was just dust. But when I stepped closer, I realized it had been drawn with a finger. Written in uneven, foggy letters was a phrase that made my knees nearly buckle. Go to the lake before dark. I stared at the message for what felt like a full minute, trying to will it to vanish, to prove it was a trick of the light. But it didn't go away. That mirror, like everything else in the house, was covered in a thick layer of dust. Nothing had disturbed it for years. Nothing. Until now. The lake. Of course. It was the place we always went. The one place Mark said he felt like he could breathe. It was just outside of town, a hidden spot we had found as kids and never told anyone about. No signs, no roads. Just a narrow trail through the trees that only we knew. And the idea of going there now felt wrong. Like opening a wound that had never really healed. But I went anyway. I didn't take anything with me. I didn't think I needed to. Just my car keys and the last letter, folded in my pocket. The sun had started to dip by the time I reached the edge of the woods. The trail was still there, though more overgrown than I remembered. The trees pressed in on both sides like silent watchers. I walked quickly, brushing branches away, trying to keep my thoughts quiet. I didn't want to think about what might be waiting for me. I just wanted to get there. The lake emerged all at once, like it always had. Still, glassy, perfectly round, like a forgotten mirror laid into the forest. The wind had died completely. No birds, no insects, just the hush of the trees leaning close. I stepped to the edge of the water, half expecting some kind of sign. There was none. I knelt down and ran my fingers through the cold surface. Nothing stirred. But when I looked up, I froze. On the opposite bank, a figure stood between the trees. Too far to make out the details. Just tall, still, facing me. I didn't move. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. The figure didn't move either. For a long time, we just stared across the lake at each other. And then, slowly, it raised a hand. Not waving, just lifting it, like a signal. I stood. My mouth was dry. I opened it to speak, but no sound came out. The figure lowered its hand and stepped back into the trees. Gone. I waited. 5 seconds. 10. A full minute. Then I ran. Around the edge of the lake, crashing through underbrush and loose stones. I slipped once, cut my knee, but I didn't stop. I had to see where he went. I had to know. But when I reached the spot, there was no one there. Just trees and moss and the endless sound of nothing. No footprints, no sign anyone had stood there. And then, a breeze. Cold and sudden, as if something huge had just moved past me. I turned, searching the trees, my breath fogging in front of me. That's when I saw the second message, carved into the bark of an old birch tree, still fresh. The letters shaky but unmistakable. Don't trust the voice. It isn't me. I stumbled back. My hand went to the letter in my pocket, the same one that said he was still here, still trying to reach me. But this message, this was a warning. And now I had no idea which one to believe. I stood in the forest like a statue, the words on the tree echoing in my head. Don't trust the voice. It isn't me. I turned in circles, scanning the woods, as if the bark itself might offer me answers. My breathing came in short gasps, and I could feel my heartbeat thudding in my fingertips. Who had written the letter? Who had appeared at the lake? What the hell had I just seen? I pulled the envelope from my pocket, my fingers trembling. The handwriting looked like marks. Everything about it felt right. The way he looped his lowercase g, the way he never dotted his I until the end. But now I was looking at a contradiction carved in living wood. Something wasn't adding up. I turned away from the tree and started back toward the car, but the trail felt different. I could have sworn it was shorter before. Now the trees looked closer and the shadows deeper. It was only dusk, but it felt like night had fallen suddenly. I kept walking, 1 step, 2, fast, faster, until I came across something lying in the middle of the path. A cassette recorder, the kind you'd find in an office in the 90s, half buried in leaves. I stopped dead. I didn't want to touch it. Every fiber in me screamed to leave it alone. But I bent down anyway and hit play. A voice crackled through the speaker, a familiar one. Alex, I know you can hear me. I'm sorry. I didn't want you to come back. You shouldn't have come back. There was a pause, static. It's not done yet. He's still looking for me. And now he knows about you too. You have to go. Please, just go. The tape clicked off. I sat there, paralyzed. It was Mark's voice. But it wasn't the calm, teasing tone I remembered. This was tired, broken, like someone being hunted. I took the cassette with me and ran. This time, the forest seemed to open up. The trail reappeared where it should have been, and I found the car right where I left it. I drove in silence, my hands clenched so tightly on the steering wheel they cramped. I didn't stop until I reached home. I locked every door, turned on every light. But the house didn't feel like safety. Not anymore. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the living room floor, the letter and the tape recorder next to me, trying to connect dots that didn't want to be connected. At 3:47 a.m., the phone rang. I stared at it. The old landline mounted on the kitchen wall, one no one used anymore. I hadn't even thought it still worked. It rang again. Against my better judgment, I picked it up. Static, then breathing. Not mine. Deep, wet, uneven. Then a voice, low and distorted. "Who are you pretending to be now?" I slammed the phone down, heart racing. The next morning, I packed everything. The tape, the letter, the memories. I drove to my parents' place, rang the bell, and when my mom opened the door, I just stood there, eyes wide and wild. "I think something followed me home," I said. "They let me stay." I didn't explain. I didn't need to. The next day, I went to see a priest. Not because I'm religious, but because I needed someone to tell me I wasn't losing my mind. He didn't laugh. He didn't doubt. He just listened. Then he said, "Some spirits lie. They wear faces, you know. They speak with voices you trust. They want you to invite them in." That's when I knew. That's when it clicked. Mark wasn't reaching out. Something else was. Something that wanted me to follow. Into the forest. Into the tunnel. Into whatever was waiting there. The chalk. The fake messages. The half-truths. I burned the letter. I crushed the cassette. I moved across the country and never went back. But sometimes I still get mail from no one. Blank envelopes, empty paper. And once, just once, a single line, scrawled in handwriting I tried not to recognize. "You're next."